Welcome back to Tort Talk. We have an exciting
applesauce.
applesauce. Welcome back to Tort Talk. We have an exciting episode here. Mass tort summer is still heating up. We have some exciting news to get through today. In this episode, we'll be covering a huge development with the $5.5 billion talcum powder settlement that was just announced. More pressure on the social media giants. Some trial updates on the Covidien Hernia Mesh and the Uber trials. Let's get into this talcum powder settlement. John, what do we have here? Joe, what do we have here?
Hey, just a quick note before we get started on this episode. Here's the thing about RR Digital. We built it the right way. We're founder-led, independent, and actually care about what happens to your firm. We curate marketing strategies as if we're on your payroll, setting the new standard for what legal marketing should be. Head to rrdigitalmedia.com to learn more, and let's have a conversation.
If only we had push record about 5 minutes earlier, because the banter back and forth about this settlement was fire. Joe, as you know, we had this giant settlement yesterday. The news broke late yesterday afternoon. We were talking about it last night. We were talking about it this morning. The firms that were involved started to come out, release their own statements today about this settlement. What is your take on it? And why don't you break it down for everyone what actually happened?
Yeah, so this is a good deal. Anytime we get a settlement from the defendants and can get money in the hands of our deserving clients, it's a win, especially after 15 years of litigation. It's a win. So this is a $5.5 billion uncapped settlement. I'm seeing reports from leadership. They're saying it could go up to $7 billion. Basically, we're seeing that it includes all of the cases in MDL, a little over 69,000 cases, and then also the state court actions. I'm hearing a total of about 75,000 cases could be included. J&J is reporting that they're going to be paying $3 billion before the end of 2027. So basically what this settlement came down to was the plaintiff's experts got withdrawn. There was a hearing just last week. It was last Wednesday. And then the judge issued the show cause order. J&J came out very excited about that and said they thought this was going to bring about the end to this litigation. I made a post on LinkedIn saying what J&J didn't say is how much they're going to pay to bring it to an end. So less than a week later after that order, here we are. The settlement's announced, uncapped, $5.5 billion, probably increased some there. So people are very excited. Unfortunately, over the last 15 years, a lot of these clients are dead. A lot of these clients have really suffered, but this litigation brought about change, right? We got the product totally changed. The baby powder doesn't have the same asbestos-containing parts, or it's made now of cornstarch. J&J made that change about 5 years ago. So the product changed. The compensation's there for the clients. It's a win, and it's much better than having the judge ruling that all of the cases get dismissed because we don't have any experts. So that pressure really drove the settlement, and I heard from a lot of people who are really happy today.
What does this mean for people who were not a part of the settlement and moving forward wind up getting diagnosed with ovarian cancer?
Yeah, so they're saying this doesn't include future claims. Typically what happens in this type of situation is either plaintiffs drop out or they set aside additional funds for these other clients that come forward, somebody diagnosed today or tomorrow or next week or next year. The court is likely going to enter what's called a lone pine order. So that's going to require you to give an expert report establishing causation between the baby powder and the cancer diagnosis. And that's going to be really hard for plaintiffs to get. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of additional plaintiffs going forward. You know, we have this 75,000 people. We need 95% participation to see the settlement go forward. But usually when defendants commit to billions of dollars, the settlement goes forward.
I have been trying to get a hold of various members of the PSC, attorneys that are involved in the case. I got a hold of Vicky Maniatis from Milberg, who told us on the record, this is a minimum uncapped settlement, unlike the bankruptcy proposal that was rejected 3 times in court. It also does not carry the same individual deductions that bankruptcy trust structure would have imposed claimants are positioned to do better under this agreement than they would have under the plan J&J previously tried to push through bankruptcy. We are dealing with one of the largest settlements in the history of mass torts, one of the longest running mass torts in history. As you said, 75,000 people involved.
Was it 15 years it's been going?
15 years. Yep. Every major plaintiff's law firm in one way or another has been involved in this litigation. It is great to finally see it come to an end. I think some people are very, very excited. Most people are very, very excited about the settlement. I think there are some who maybe thought that there could have been more that has come out of it. But at the end of the day, as long as these plaintiffs and their families wind up getting paid, as long as J&J stops doing what they were doing, which we know stopped, I believe, in 2022, as you were saying, with the change to the product, I think that's a win for the plaintiffs. And we move on and we have other battles to fight.
Yeah, it's definitely a win. Like you said, Vicky, very well respected attorney. She did great work. So did her firm. I think the bankruptcy, the main takeaway for that is just procedurally under the law, that Texas two-step's not allowed. We don't want these companies spinning off, doing these sham bankruptcies and getting that out of this litigation as well. That's a win for these clients and then also future clients. So like you said, a lot of people happy. I got tons of messages. So did you. Clients are reaching out. They want to get some compensation, get what they can now, live the rest of their lives. So a huge settlement, one of the biggest numbers we've ever seen, in the history of any mass tort. So this was a win for the plaintiffs, a good day. A lot of people really excited. 15-year battle with one of the hardest companies to fight, J&J. So it's a good day. Like I said, much better than getting all of the cases dismissed.
For the attorneys who have not seen one of these major settlements come through before, what does the timeline look like versus, what was publicly put out in the press release? When do the funds actually wind up hitting the plaintiffs? When do the funds actually wind up hitting the firms? And then as a follow-up, what do you see firms doing that were heavily involved in this litigation as sort of a next move with any return on their investment in the Talc cases?
Before you answer, Joe, if you want to understand deeper dive on what the process looks like once a settlement happens, go watch the episode with Gary Goldberg from Archer, where we deep dive into that. Editing team put it right here or in the description below.
Yeah, so the main thing is going to be getting to that participation threshold, which is 95%. So basically, there's tens of thousands of clients out there going to need to reach out to them, make sure you have good contact. There's going to be some sort of document. Usually we have a disclosure, which, provides details on the settlement. They'll opt into participating in the settlement. It will say there's going to be a special master who's going to consider a number of factors. You're going to be assigned a point value. Each point's going to have a dollar amount. You're going to get that dollar amount. In addition to that disclosure, they're going to sign a release saying they're in on the settlement. Every single release is going to have to be run by J&J. There's going to be deficiencies. There's going to be back and forth. I'm thinking it's going to take at least 9 months, maybe up to a year to get that releases in, accepted by the defendants, up to that 95% threshold. Once we reach that point, the fund should come. There could be provisions in the settlement agreement where they make some sort of initial payment to a QSF, a fund, basically when we get to maybe 75% or 85%, and then ultimately 95%. That'll be determined, and there might even be what we call these quick pay options, which we've seen in some other mass torts, where people are taking lower amounts in order to get to the front of the line, get paid a little bit quicker, but a less amount. Usually, a mass tort, the clients don't get paid within the first year from the time there's a settlement announced, because we have to get that threshold release. And then we also have to go ahead and do any liens, which I'm sure you guys talked about with Archer, where it's going to be required to do the Medicare, Medicaid, any government liens. So I'm thinking maybe towards the end of 2027, a lot of these clients could have some money coming in, but it's going to be a process. That claims administration is going to be serious, but hopefully by the beginning of 27, we're hearing J&J giving a significant amount of that money And then also in these cases, because so many of these plaintiffs are deceased, you got to make sure you have the proper party. There's an estate open, there's a will. There's going to be some work to do, but everybody in this space is pretty familiar with how to handle that.
And then what's next? Where should people be, or where do you think some of that money is going to be going, I guess, as you prognosticate into 2027, 2028?
Yeah, I mean, right now, everybody, I would say, are really excited about social media addiction and hair relaxer, right? Those seem to be the big ones standing. Who knows how much longer there is in social media addiction? And then I anticipate some of the more aggressive, experienced mass tort firms, they like to get involved in the newer litigations. So the Olympus, which we don't even have an MDL formed, I think those are going to be the ones everybody's talking about through the end of the year. Social media, hair relaxer, and Olympus. What ones are you guys hearing people talking about?
We're seeing a lot of interest in social media addiction. We're seeing a lot of interest in scopes. There's still some fragmented interest in some of the legacy torts. I think people were hoping for a resolution in Talc. So, up until yesterday, there was definitely interest in Talc as well. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. We got MTMP coming up here in a few months. Roblox, I think, is still out there. We're still dealing with Uber. We'll talk about that in a little bit. There's just a lot of activity right now. And I think this, as Marc, you said, the summer of mass torts is really heating up, continues to stay hot as we saw the settlement come with Talc. And hopefully we have some more resolutions positive in the plaintiff's favor over the next couple of months, because we have a couple of trials coming up in social media addiction, right, Marc?
Yep, we have trials coming up in Tennessee and California for the social media addiction MDL. Joe, what can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so we actually just kicked off the Tennessee trial. That's the AG going against Meta. So we've seen basically the social media giants are settling out these personal injury individual cases. We had the $6 million verdict. The other case that was supposed to be starting this week ended up getting settled. We have the Tennessee trial going on. And then, like you mentioned, next month, we have going on in California in the MDL, more AGs going after these social media giants. So these cases are huge. The demands are huge. We saw basically with the New Mexico AG secured the initial verdict of $375 million. I'm thinking a similar type number for each one of these states. So we'll see how that plays out. And while that's ongoing, these individual users, their cases are going forward too. I think we're up over 5,000 cases so far. I expect social media addiction to be the busiest case through the rest of the year.
Yeah, social media addiction absolutely heating up. We have both of those trials, as well as a bunch of interest from firms in acquiring these cases. We are seeing the settlements. Very interesting to see how that progresses. We have another trial. We're actually 2 weeks into the Covidien Hernia Mesh trial. What are you hearing from that trial, and where does this go?
Yeah, so reports are the trial's going well for the plaintiffs. We were expecting somewhere between a 3 to 4 week trial. I don't think we're going to end up seeing a verdict this week. I'd expect one before the end of next week. This case is in the MDL. There's about 10,000 total cases between the MDL and state court. All reports are that it's been going well. The plaintiff is well received by the jury. Things are looking positive. We have a really good trial team there. So I'm expecting a plaintiff verdict in that case. Like I said, we'll see next week. Hopefully we get a good number, and that could lead to further settlement discussions.
Hopefully there's a positive verdict in that one. Keep the pressure on them. Keep it moving forward. And that is the last active hernia mesh MDL that's going on right now, right, Joe?
Yep, that's the last MDL for hernia mesh out there.
And then moving on to another, let's call him tech giant, the Uber MDL. We're approaching 4,000 cases in the MDL, and there's 2 upcoming trials on top of that for September and October. Have there been any recent rulings of note, or what's going on with this case?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we have 2 trials coming up. Uber's up to their old tricks, trying to get everything kicked out. Seems like their last arguments that they needed more time between the trials was really unsuccessful. The judge said, hey, this is the 3rd and 4th trial. You guys know the facts. You know the witnesses. You know the documents. We're going to keep pushing these forward. And that's really what we need. They also are trying to get the punitive damages kicked out. Doesn't look like that's going to be likely. So I'm really hoping that both of these trials hold. We have a judge who seems really interested in keeping the pressure on Uber, which is what we need. We'll see in the next month or two if I'm going to be predicting an Uber global before the end of the year, but it seems like that could actually be possible at this point.
Wow, that's big news.
Man, this would be the year of settlements if that happens.
Yeah.
After the drought of the past couple of years, this 2026 might be known as the year of mass tort settlements.
Yeah, we had Depot, we have Roundup, we have Talc. Maybe we could have Uber. I mean, a lot of good work went into these cases. We'll keep pushing them forward, but what we need is that multi-prong attack. We need these trial dates to hold, and we got to just keep pushing the cases forward for the clients because a lot of very deserving clients out there.
Joe, it's the summer of mass torts. It's the end of July. We're heading into August, about to hit the fall. So much news in mass torts. Make sure if you're watching that you follow us and watch Tort Talk every week for the best 10 minutes in mass torts. And make sure you follow Joe Fantini. Joe does law. He is also providing updates pretty much on a daily basis now, Joe, of what's going on as he's got his ear to the street in all the trials, talking to the firms that are heavily involved in all the mass tort cases. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next week on Tort Talk.